Listen Fast, Listen First delivers real-time, authentic stories told by successful Connecticut business owners and community leaders. You'll hear pivotal moments of risk-taking, failure, adaptability, and resilience that all lead to success. And now, the host of Listen Fast, Listen First, Alex Horton.
Our next guest is Pastor Richard Williams, the Executive Director of Pivot Ministries in Bridgeport, a faith-based men's residential recovery program. Pivot's mission: to treat drug and alcohol addiction as a spiritual problem and to return the men to their families usefully whole. 13 years ago, Richard enrolled as one of their residents to end over 2 decades of his own cocaine and alcohol addiction. High-profile and high-salary roles in banking and government led him to a 23-year-long lifestyle of heavy drugs and drinking. But at age 49, he said enough. He walked through the doors of Pivot full of arrogance and with a big ego, proclaiming the place a dump. 9 months later, he was a changed man as a successful graduate and has been at the helm of the program for the past few years, helping hundreds of men on their journey to end addiction. Welcome to the show, Pastor Richard.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for the introduction.
It's great to see you. I'm so glad you're here. So when you walked into Pivot full of ego and arrogance and you proclaimed the place a dump, what was behind that?
Well, I remember that day just as clear as I'm sitting here, September the 7th, 2007. I walked in at 12:15 in the cover of night. I remember it clearly, walking in, and the ceiling tiles were hanging. You could see the water stains. The carpet was torn, and this was an arrogant spirit walking in. I'm beat up from the floor up. Everything that I'm familiar with is gone, but I'm still trying to hold on to have things the way I want them. I remember walking to the building, and just from the building alone, I'm thinking, what have I gotten myself into? Life is supposed to be getting better. I've decided to get better, but I'm walking into a dump.
How hard was it for you to make the decision to enter a recovery or a rehab program?
Well, the time had come. I was really ready. Long before me walking into Pivot, my mind, I'd come to a point where I was tired of drugs. I was tired of the lifestyle. And there were several attempts to do it on my own, and I just wasn't able to. So when I walked through Pivot's door, my mind was made up. I was done. I really needed to change. So this whole idea of being at your wit's end and then just releasing everything, surrendering. Surrendering to the point where I decided to stay in that dump that night, and I'm glad I did.
Well, there's no doubt that you came to a place that now is 40 years or over 50 years, right? That Pivot's been in
50 years. Yeah, we celebrated 50 years last year,
and it's amazing. And and it's a Christian organization,
faith-based, Christ-centered, Christian-based. Yes,
and I've known Richard for 5 years, and I could tell you 2 things about him. Number one, when this guy walks into a room, he brightens up the room. He's just got that, and then the second thing about Richard is what he says he means, and he loves the people of Pivot. I've observed this, and this guy is salt of the earth. You really are, and I want people to know that. If I had a kid or a family member that needed help, I would have no reservation about sending them to you.
Well, I thank you for those kind words, Alex. A lot of that comes from my journey at Pivot and receiving Christ and allowing change in my heart and in my mind. A lot of what you described was poured into me as a kid. I had great parents. I was fortunate to have both parents in the home. I was born in 57, so I grew up in the 50s, 60s, 70s. The social and racial climate was even. You know what that was like back then. So I didn't get exposed to a lot. So when I went off to college, I just became full of myself, and a lot of those basic principles that I learned as a kid, I just kind of put behind me. Money, status, all those things became my goal and aspiration. And at the same time, they all became my downfall. Not that they're bad things to have, mind you. It was just that I wasn't a good steward of those things. The arrogance, the ego, all that played a part into me becoming this person that I'm sure my family didn't recognize after a while.
And how hard was it for your family or your loved ones when you made the decision to get help? Were they supportive? Were they behind you? Did they say good riddance? What was that like?
Boy, were they supportive. Again, 23 years of that lifestyle. And, I come from a close-knit family. My reference point to what love is what was expressed in my household and my family between one another. That's my definition of love. And the deeper I went into addiction, that began to change. It didn't look the same as it did. And I'm thinking it's them, but all along it was me. So when I decided to come to Pivot and get better and begin to heal, I realized that their love had never left. It was all my perspective because, they weren't giving me what I wanted, when I wanted it, and how I wanted it. So as the more I healed, the more I began to see that.
Great to, I would imagine a lot of men who arrive at Pivot's door, not everybody has the, family support or somebody who's supporting them necessarily. And that's, you're right, you're absolutely right. I'm one of the fortunate ones. I come from a family where love was the foundation. And, there are households that, unfortunately that don't have that depth of connection with one another and love between one another. I remember I was there maybe about a month, and one of my sisters sent me my first Bible that I owned myself with my name in it. Wow, how great was that, huh? I think I still have it, by the way. Oh, that's great. Well, it's probably just what the doctor ordered at that point,
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So now you're the executive director of a nonprofit in which you battled your demons, your addictions, and they obviously supported you. Did you have classical education in running a nonprofit? I know you're an educated man, but
absolutely not.
Is that right?
Absolutely not. So my plan when I came to Pivot, was to complete Pivot and go back to teach. Professionally, I'm a special ed teacher. I completed Maryland University back in 1981. So I was in the classroom for like 2 or 3 years, but then I got this great job in banking, and that started the journey. And from banking, I got a great job in D.C. with the Superior Court as a deputy clerk to the Register of Wills. Again, job, status, money, all these things were just flowing. And it was in those spaces things started to fall apart. So fast forward to age 49 when I get to Pivot, I'm thinking, wow, 49, what's left to do? I can go back and teach. So my plan was to get sober, heal, and go back to Maryland to teach. But something happened at Pivot. I had a great mentor, the Reverend David B. Smith, who was the executive director at the time. He began to pour into my life. He began to speak into my life. I began to identify those character defects and started addressing them. And it was just the power of God in that space at Pivot that started to transform my thinking. And then Pastor Dave used to always say, you're going to run this ministry one day. And he just continued to speak that as if it were. I eventually became a licensed minister and then finally an ordained minister. So when Pastor Dave exited, we had another executive director that came in following him. And then at the exit of that executive director, I became the executive director of Pivot. Had no idea of what a nonprofit was. My worst subject in school was math. So I knew the executive director had to be good in math, budgets and fiscal and all that. But I had none of that. But when I came on board, again, God and His sovereignty and His economy, there were these amazing men and women that were drawn around me to teach me, to show me, to be patient with me. I remember the first board meeting. They were going through the financials, Alex, and they were like, I couldn't even keep up what page. I didn't even know what page they were on, right? I'm just kind of flipping like it. And I remember just a couple of years later, we were in a board meeting, and man, were they talking to finances, and I was right up there with them. I was right there. I knew exactly where they were, what they were talking about. I had some things to add, and I just give all that to the glory of God. There's an old saying that He doesn't call the equipped, but He equips the called. So as I was called into this space, He equipped me to do the job that I'm doing now. But I get such a joy out of it. It's my anchor. To see God move in the way He does at Pivot day in and day out. I have the best seat in the room. I get to see God move in the lives of men just as He did in mine. And that's my joy. One of the things I greet the men with every morning is, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And it's in His might, it's in His power that I'm able to do that. When I look over my shoulder and see the journey and how He released His Spirit over me and have drawn me to this place, even today, as I sit here and have this conversation with you, the journey still continues, and I love every minute of it.
It's just wonderful. And again, the energy that you bring out is absolutely contagious. I can't get enough of listening to you. I can just sit here all day. So let me ask you this, because I want to talk to you about fundraising
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that go along with running a nonprofit. But before I do that, so teaching a man to fish and teaching your guys other life skills like job readiness and so forth, is that how big of a part of the program is that?
Big part of it. So partnership is important as we in this whole nonprofit space. Pivot doesn't. The staff and myself at Pivot, we don't do this alone. We have an amazing community of partners and volunteers and supporters that come alongside us to do the things we do. With regard to equipping a guy to navigate beyond the walls of Pivot, that's the goal, because we want to return him to his home usefully whole. Surprisingly enough, most of the men that come to the program, they have skills, they've had jobs, they have a sense of being in that space of addiction. All that's just dismissed. So as they're filled with God's Spirit and transformed, those things are resurrected. We're coming up on Easter resurrection. So this is so appropriate right now. His story hasn't changed as God is writing it. So in the space of Pivot, we create this space where God comes in and does what God do in our lives. So we're there as servants. We've connected with a great vocational training program in Bridgeport, Career Resources. They provide everything you need from A to Z in terms of employability, retention, jobs training, work training, skills, the whole bit. So they're a great partner. There's a class called Strive that really challenges a guy to come out of his comfort zone in terms of interviewing, how to dress for the interview, how to present. So that's a big part of it to getting to that end. In terms of challenges, my goal at Pivot is to one day be able to tell every man on his first day at Pivot, we have a job waiting for you. So it's the placement piece that we're challenged with. We have a great program that readies the men, but I found that employers and placement is a challenge. The men come in with history. Some have records, felons, misdemeanors, and those things play against the idea of job placement. So that's how you can pray. I invite you to join us in prayer on how to get through that and navigate the placement piece. I love to connect with business owners, the big box stores, small businessmen and women to come alongside of us, understand our culture, understand the pivot man and how he's been transformed and he's prepared and ready to be a productive member of society, and give him a second chance. I call them second chance employers, and that's who we're seeking to partner with now.
Okay. And so surrounding yourself by good people, by community leaders, church leaders, you've got a great board.
Yep.
How instrumental is your board and various leaders that are outside of the day-to-day pivot?
Mentorship, leadership, partnerships are also important, and that they've all been all three of those things have been a major part of my journey. I've had all the way through the 13 years. Even today, God will draw an individual into the path of His will for me, to whom I'm to listen, to whom I'm to glean from, to move into the next season. Like I mentioned before, the board, when I came on as executive director, the people that God put in place were teachers, were mentors, they were encouragers. In addition to being a diverse group, we have an Anglican priest, we have a couple of finance people, we have an individual who is whose acumen is real estate and construction. We have a stager. So all these people and their skill sets have helped me manage Pivot, as well as help me, has come alongside my vision with Pivot. So again, connecting and remaining teachable, that's the big piece. And I'm still learning.
Aren't we all? I find the same thing in my business. What's helped me tremendously is knowing a lot about a lot. And the only way you do that, books and podcasts help, but it's really from meeting people from different industries who have, who are immersed in what they're doing, who are passionate about what it is that they're doing, obviously, and what it is you're doing. So surrounding yourself by great people.
And that's really worked. And I continue to give God all the glory. I don't think anything has been just coincidental. He has a plan, and I've been invited to cooperate with that plan. So there is this continual submission under the Word of God that I operate. I go into prayer before I make decisions. I seek counsel. The Word of God says there's wisdom in counsel. So I have an inner circle. If there's issues on my plate or I have to make some decisions, I have people I can call. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? How should I proceed with this? And I listen to them and take their advice. It works.
Right. Listen first. Listen fast. Right.
Hey, that's what we do here, right?
Often. That's it. Yeah. No doubt. You learn a lot more by listening than talking.
Absolutely.
Right? So. Okay, so I wanted to ask you too about obviously COVID and how that changed things for the men of Pivot, and then for fundraising and relying on big signature events. Most nonprofits have one or two big signature events where they gather a ton of people and they have some type of support or cost. But how did COVID impact the guys and you and then some of the things that you're trying to accomplish?
Just as so many other people, Alex, last year was a journey for us. You've heard me speak a lot about connection and community. That's Pivot's lifeline. We've connected and partnered with a lot of churches. We have a lot of individuals that support us. And it's that communication, that connecting, that face-to-face fellowship, that is our lifeline. And then COVID comes along and literally severs that lifeline. So I have to admit, in the beginning, there was panic. How do we do this? As a matter of fact, COVID hit us last year just around the planning of our Good Friday fundraiser. It's a major fundraiser for Pivot. Kind of helps us through the second quarter. What are we going to do? One of our board members suggested that we do a virtual prayer breakfast. And I'm thinking, and how do we do that? Where do we begin? Who knows how to do anything virtual? This is a whole new game for us. But again, seeking counsel, asking questions, meeting the right people. We did our first virtual event last prayer breakfast. And again, in God's economy, so when COVID hit, should have been a time of lacking and famine. And in the beginning, it was, the food, the food dried up in the pantries. We had to struggle to get food, but God again drew people in. There was this platform called Meal Train, Greens Farms, and other local churches. You guys really stepped in on that in terms of getting food into the program for us. But in terms of the finance in this fundraising event, we usually hold that at the Woodway Country Club every year, and we get 400 people in the room. Over 2,000 people saw the prayer breakfast through virtual platform.
Wow.
So again, you talk about increase. He's a God. God is a God of increase, and we were able to make it through that year. We did have an unfortunate loss of Minister Banks, who passed away April 23rd of last year. So all of the leadership, myself, Minister Banks, who was Director of Spiritual Development, Kevin Covington, who was the Program Director, and DeWitt Harmon, who was our Education Director, all four of us, the top four leaders were all down with COVID at the same time. So that was pretty scary. The frontline workers had to step up, which they've done all across the nation, not just in Pivot. The frontline folk carried the torch, and I want to just thank them for being brave, being courage, and stepping up when duty called. So we made it through, and we're good right now. We haven't had any exposure since October of last year. We all just got our first shots last Thursday, so we're looking forward to getting the second shots. We were able to set up a great protocol for quarantining and all that. Our board president, Steve Forty, he's a emergency room nurse. He works now for a major hospital in the city. So he was our guidepost through this entire season of COVID. He would get information right off the top and pass it on to us and give us instruction and directions on how to do things. So again, right person, right time. And I give God the glory.
So, making it through COVID, one final question on running a nonprofit and relying on donations. How, as a nonprofit that is religious-based, you can't take federal funding, can you?
Well, we can. There just isn't any. Meaning there is very, very little. That's a very small slice of the pie. You have thousands of nonprofits, and then you have a very small measure of that, which are faith-based nonprofits. We're all vying for this small piece. Mm-hmm. We don't turn away a dollar, but at this point, there's no federal funding, no state funding, no city funding at Pivot. It's all private funding from churches and individuals. So again, that lifeline, that was so important for us. But again, God made a way. We've connected through these moments right now. We're on Zoom. So it's been a blessing to us.
That's great. Okay. So now I've got two questions that are really critical. Number one, if there's somebody listening right now that has a problem or is addicted, and what's your advice for them?
If there's anyone with a problem right now, there is help. Pivot has opened its doors. We are fully operational, and we are there. There's always a seat at the table for you. You can go to our website. I can give you the number. Maybe Alex will be able to put this on the screen later. Kevin Covington is our program director. You can reach him at 203-336-9263. You give us a call, and we would love to have a conversation with you. a major piece of that is being ready. And that's a different point for everyone. You know, when I walked in 49 years ago, I was ready, and 13 years later, I've sustained my sobriety, and I'm in a good place.
Is there any, if there's somebody listening who wants to make a donation or volunteer to help Pivot, same thing, reach out to Kevin, or what should they do?
They can go to our website. We have a development director, Mary Lee. Her phone number is on the website. Okay. They can call me. We have the prayer breakfast coming up. It's an annual fundraiser. God was just amazing in terms of helping and providing resources to us last year. So we're in a place we've never been before. But again, things are loosening up. Our doors are open. We anticipate knocks on the door. You know, so the support needs to continue so we can continue to help men.
And you have room for, is it about 32 men in Bridgeport?
Yeah. So we have 54 beds on campus. Okay. About 28 of those beds are for students, okay, and 18 are for staff.
When you say students, you mean the residents?
The residents, yes, yeah. So
and it's 18 or older program, right?
18 or older, okay, program, right. Yeah.
All right, so if somebody out there does have an addiction or has a need, just reach out. You know, that is absolutely the first step.
We're there for you. We're there for you.
All right, so we're gonna shift gears into our Connecticut rapid fire questions. The idea here is, you know, let's support our local businesses. So you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Favorite pizza place in Connecticut?
Pepe's Pizza.
Pepe's
Without a
Pizza.
doubt. Yes.
All right. I mean, it's hard to beat Pepe's Pizza.
Pepe's Pizza, hands down, yes.
Are you talking New Haven? You talking Bridgeport?
Fairfield, yeah. Right. Exit 24, yes.
All right. Shout out to Pepe's Pizza. All right, favorite. I don't know if you're a coffee guy, a deli guy, but you know, through COVID, what was your go-to place for a coffee or maybe a sandwich?
I'd have to say Starbucks, and second to that was, believe it or not, Cumberland Farms Coffee.
Oh, I'm a big Cumberland Farms. Yeah, over in Westport. That's my stop. You know?
Yeah, that was my go-to.
Well, there's a big difference between Cumberland Farms coffee and Starbucks. It's about $3 a coffee.
Yeah, right? Well, you know, and I'll share it. I'll be honest. So when I'm with friends and we want a really great cup of coffee, we go to Starbucks. You know, but if I'm on the go and I'm, you know, in motion, it's Cumberland Farms.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Favorite nonprofit organization other than Pivot Ministries? If you were going to donate, if you were going to work with, well, I'll be quiet. You go ahead.
Yeah. So that would be the Red Cross, hands down. Yeah. In my lifetime, I've been in 2 fires, one at 8 years old and one as a junior at the Maryland University. And the Red Cross was there both times to do what they do.
Okay. Favorite high school sport? So if you were going to go to, in Connecticut, if you were going to go watch a game, swimming, football, you name it, what would you go to right now?
I'd have to say a basketball game, but I'm not a sports guy. Okay. That's a difficult one. I've watched sports for the social aspect, not for the sportsmanship. I'm just not a sports guy.
No problem. So we want to thank Richard Williams, Pastor Richard Williams, for his time today. Again, you can go to Pivot's website. You can find Pivot on Facebook. They're all over social media. They've got a big event coming up for the Good Friday prayer breakfast. Check him out. It really is. This is a wonderful man leading a great organization. We thank you for your time today, Richard.
Thank you for the invitation, Alex, and prayerfully all who are watching. If this is going to be shown before April 2nd, join us for the Good Friday prayer breakfast.
We'll get it out there, and I also want to thank our sponsors: Infinite Web Designs, Papa's Commercial Photography, and BRBG Insurance. Thanks for tuning in to Listen Fast, Listen First. Please like, share, subscribe. We greatly appreciate you. Thanks all, and have a great day.